I'm Professor Jenna Hartel. Welcome to Information Science. This 13th episode in the What Makes This Paper Great series focuses upon the conference paper, Theorizing Notions of Searching, Resources and Evaluation in the Light of Generative AI. It contains important insights for anyone in library and information science as we attempt to make sense of the rapidly changing information environment brought about by generative artificial intelligence. The author, Olof Sundin, is Professor of Information Studies at Lund University in Sweden. He is a prominent scholar of search in everyday life, media and information literacy, and the construction of public knowledge in this information age. Sundin is an expert who can be trusted with this urgent topic. Like all episodes of this series, which take a deep dive into a single paper, my video will first state the publication context and purpose of the paper, provide a high-level structural tour, examine the research method and sources. Then I will recap and illustrate the main arguments. At the end, I'll share what makes this paper great. This timely paper was presented in early June 2025 at COLIS, the premier international conference about library and information science theory. It speaks to the excitement, confusion, and trepidation surrounding generative artificial intelligence, in particular, the large language models that convincingly mimic human capabilities with text. In his own words,
"My primary aim is to contribute to a conceptual discussion of search, sources, and evaluation in an information infrastructure increasingly permeated by AI.
With 11 pages overall and 3 of references, this is not an overly long paper. The introduction presents an important distinction between searching for sources and searching for answers. Students, you really need to understand the difference, so stay tuned. The next section, Information in its Material Form, explains the socio-material theoretical perspective taken in the paper. The middle portion, From Providing Documents to Providing Answers, is an insightful technical history that shows how searching has changed fundamentally over the past 100 years. The penultimate segment, Evaluation of Information, steps back to reveal the problems that AI and large language models create for information seekers if they attempt to uphold best practices of information literacy. The conclusion of the paper offers a recap and reflections. But first, how did this paper come to be? The research method is a theoretical analysis that draws upon existing theories and concepts to interpret, explain, and understand a specific phenomenon, in this case, searching. I believe the paper also does important historical work, too. To humanize and modernize the approach, Sundin's paper is multivocal. We hear the words of library and information science luminaries, the voices of Swedish school children, claims of Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, and cautions from technocritics like Emily Bender, who casts LLMs as stochastic parrots, which I'll return to later. The introduction begins with a Swedish upper school student speaking thoughtfully about a progression in their information experience.
First you read books, then you Googled, and in the future you might use GPT to get information.
This anecdote about the evolving information environment is a springboard for a key insight of the paper. That is, searching may be for information about documents in order to find a source, or searching may be for information within documents so as to find an answer or fact. To illustrate, if a person wants to know what is the height of Mount Everest, the resolution to a search may be the identification of Encyclopedia Britannica, which has a chapter on Mount Everest. This is a source. Or the search may conclude, the height of Mount Everest is 9,002 feet, which is an answer or fact. This vivid illustration primes the reader to consider exactly which kind of searching is happening within generative AI and large language models. The introduction closes with Sundin asking,
What happens when AI-infused information systems increasingly provide answers rather than directing people to sources?
The next section, Information in its Material Form, might also be called the theoretical framework. Sundin explains that he takes a socio-material approach to information. This outlook means seeing information not as an abstraction or cognitive construct, but as a vibrant and active participant in the ongoing making of our world. Two sociomaterial examples are provided from deep in the history of library and information science and its European documentation movement at the turn of the last century. Historical examples of what? Information being sought in the form of a source and as a fact. The French library theorist Suzanne Brie is famous for declaring that even an antelope can be a source document if it is placed in a zoo to inform people about the properties and habits of antelopes. Put differently, Brie cast librarians as concerned with information sources of all kinds, incredibly, even antelopes. A different European documentalist, the lawyer, statesman, and bibliographer Paul Otlet, had his own bold vision. More than a century ago, he extracted and classified millions of facts from information sources into an amalgamated, decontextualized, universal book of knowledge. Sundin ends this section with the question,
Can Otlet's positivist notion of extracting abstract facts from documents or information sources be compared to the increasing trend of information systems to attempt to provide answers instead of sources?
The next section of the paper changes gears. It is a technical history that reveals different kinds of search infrastructures used over the past century. Ancient libraries were organized through lists and bibliographies compiled by librarians with expert knowledge of the collection. The bibliographies identified sources, which might have been scrolls or tablets. An innovation of modern libraries was the card catalog. It was the ultimate manual technology to locate print sources and became a symbol of libraries. Beginning in the 1970s, card catalogs were converted to machine-readable text. These online public access systems, or OPACs, gave most people their first experiences of searching on a computer for a source, which was usually a book. Databases soon followed to search for other kinds of documentary sources, like newspaper or journal articles. In the early 1990s, the Internet was a major breakthrough. Internet search engines crawled the web to build an index. The index could be searched to rank and display results to relevant web pages, which were sources. At this time, being one of Google Search's 10 blue links was a coveted accomplishment. Google Search initiated a consequential change in 2012. A search generated links to sources and tapped a knowledge graph with a knowledge panel that displayed answers and facts. Yet the knowledge panel showed sources too, making this a hybrid example of the two forms. In 2016, Google Search launched another significant development called Featured Snippets, which presented extracts from documents above the search results. The featured snippets, which contains answers, came to supersede and dominate the results. Sundin writes,
Knowledge panels, featured snippets, and other forms of direct answers provided by search engines exemplify a shift towards delivering content in the form of answers to questions rather than directing users to sources.
This takes us to today's generative artificial intelligence and large language models, which exploded in late 2022. These technologies are replacing all other kinds of searches. Users are attracted to the conversational chatbot interface and the uncannily expert outputs. Here we reach the culminating insight of Sundin's paper. These systems are very different than preceding search technologies. They generate answers without retraceable connections to sources. What is more, the answers are highly problematical. Sundin invokes a famous critique by Emily Bender, who asserts that LLMs operate as stochastic parrots. They compose answers based upon word occurrence patterns gleaned from vast text collections of unknown provenance and quality. Like a parrot who can mimic human speech, the LLM's answers are seemingly coherent but devoid of real meaning. A complete critical analysis of LLMs is beyond the scope of Sundin's paper. Curious viewers can learn more from these two excellent sources. Nearing the end of the paper and upholding his socio-technical theoretical orientation, Sundin shifts attention to the implications of generative AI and LLMs upon society. In particular, for information literacy, the set of skills that help people find, evaluate, and use information effectively and ethically. Librarians have a long tradition of teaching information literacy. We champion best practices such as the ACRL's Framework for Information Literacy and its 6 frames. Note that the very first concerns assessing the authority of information. Another set of guidelines is the SIFT method, which stands for Stop, Investigate, Find, Trace. Both protocols affirm that it's essential to evaluate information based upon who created it and where it came from. Yet generative AI and LLMs make information evaluation nearly impossible. Sources have become invisible or non-existent. Searchers therefore default to weak and sometimes unskilled assessments of information, referred to by the theorist Patrick Wilson as intrinsic plausibility, meaning whatever aligns with their common sense or experience. In the case of students, that experience may be quite limited. And now, what makes this paper great? This paper reconciles library and information science to an information age centered on generative AI and large language models. To that end, it chronicles how search systems have evolved from delivering information sources to presenting answers and facts. Readers are alerted that these answers are synthetic and designed to sound like reliable human experts, but are not. The technological developments are placed into the history of library and information science, stretching back to the European documentation movement. We see a precursor in Paul Otlay's fact-filled Universal Book of Knowledge, though Otlay involved human beings in the process. Throughout, a sociomaterial theoretical perspective reveals real impacts on people, as when information evaluation becomes quite difficult, especially for students. Practically speaking, professional readers are better able to teach information literacy to a next generation. I'm not surprised that theorizing notions of searching, resources, and evaluation in light of generative AI won the Best Paper Award at the 2025 COLAS Conference. Thanks for watching this 13th episode of the What Makes This Paper Great series. Check out the other episodes in the series. Please share, comment upon, and like my videos, and subscribe to videos to learn more about information science. Goodbye.